Hello and welcome to Sunset Television. I am Vishal Dahiya and you're watching our special election series Battleground 2021. Now, the coming days would see political parties from West Bengal, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Assam and Puducherry slug it out to form governments during the state assembly elections. Now, the 4 states and 1 union territory are scheduled to go to polls starting from 26th of March. Now, the states are all set for biggest electoral event. They are all political parties have picked up the pace and are busy deciding their candidates and stitching alliances on the ground based on various permutations and combinations. And the most important of them, obviously, is the winnability factor. Now, today in this half an hour, we will talk about the political parties, specifically the Congress party and its prospects in these 4 states and the union territory. What are the expectations for the Congress here, and also the challenges for the party, specifically given the tussle, the internal tussle which has been going on between several several leaders in the party, not only in the states but at the national level as well. So will it affect the party's prospects and how will the things pan out? So let's start with the figures of West Bengal to try and understand what the ground situation is or has been for Congress party since 2011. We'll first talk about West Bengal and the state of Assam, and then we will go on to the other 2 states. Now, in the 2011 assembly elections, the Congress won 42 seats with a vote percentage of 9. In 2016 Legislative Assembly elections, Congress won 44 seats and BJP had 3 seats. Talking about the 2014 general election, the Congress won just 4 seats and the vote percentage of the party was around 10. And in the general elections of 2019, this number further came down to just 2 seats. Now, after West Bengal, let's also take a look at Assam now. In the 2011 assembly elections, the Congress won 78 seats out of 126 and the vote percentage was 39%. Later on, in 2016, the party was voted out of power and it could win only 26 seats. In the 2014 Lok Sabha elections, Congress had won 3 out of 14 seats in the state, and in 2019 Lok Sabha elections, the number further went down to 3 seats. So let's begin by understanding the finer nuances in these 2 states and also specifically as to how these numbers might translate for the Congress party in this particular election. Let me introduce you to our guests here. We have 2 senior journalists who are joining us. In fact, Shekhar Iyer has joined us right now, and Sandeep Phukan, our second guest, will also be with us very soon. Shekhar, a senior journalist, is with us. Welcome, Shekhar, to Sunset Television. Let's start by understanding this ground situation in these 2 states. Shekhar, we're talking about Assam and West Bengal. If we pick them one by one, and one state where the party was in power till not long ago, and the other state where it lost hold on the power, almost a few decades back.
Camera on.
Shekhar, can you hear me?
Yeah, Vishal, I think you have mentioned those the percentages and the seats that they won in the previous elections. Well, both in Assam and Bengal, it's a very interesting scenario. But it is in Assam, I think the Congress is supposed to be in a more, I would say, in a striking distance from power because of given the nature of the demography and the nature of the alliances there, the kind of issues that are coming up in Assam this time. And in Bengal, of course, Congress has been on the slide because it was, after all, a breakaway faction of the Congress led by Mamata Banerjee, which became Trinamool Congress. And for the last 10 years, the situation has been such. Mamata Banerjee ensured the complete decimation of the Congress, I would say, to a great extent, by taking away a lot of leaders who had substantial influences, across the state. Now, from 2011 to 2021, as we see the assembly elections there, now Congress has been forced to go for an alliance with the left front, and along with left front, you have a New Indian Secular Front, which is led by the Furfura cleric Abbas Siddiqui. But if you look at Assam, Assam is, as I said earlier, the nature of the mandate has been there. It's quite fractured. So parties are forced to enter into alliances with with their like-minded, or at least on issues whom they can get on their side. But this time in Assam, the Congress has decided to have an open alliance with a group of parties that includes All India Minority Front, which is going to be I would say, a very interesting aspect to elections in Assam this time, because AIUDF, led by the perfume king, as they call him, is Maulana Ajmal and Badruddin Ajmal. He's a very famous personality who commands a lot of support among the minority groups in Assam. And normally it has been the tactics of a senior Congress leader, the late Tarun Gogoi, who always felt an open alliance with a leader who is commanding the votes of the minority would not serve the Congress interests. So, if at all, there was some kind of, I would say, tacit understanding in some areas, in some pockets, but never an open understanding. But this time, the Congress decided that in terms of the percentages, vote percentages that various groups have, so they decided to go in for, a kind of an alliance that includes Congress, AIUDF, it has CPI, CPIML, then there is a Anchalik Gana Morcha.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to do, I would say, a lot of arithmetic, but I'm not sure about what kind of political chemistry that will unfold in Assam. And
Okay.
because the fact is, the BJP does face a challenge, even though Soropan the Soul of Sonowal, I would say, has done very well as a chief minister of the state. A number of development projects have been rolled out. But there is one issue, which is the Citizenship Amendment Act issue, which has been rattling a lot of people, the Brahmaputra Valley as well as in Barak Valley. So the Congress and AIUDF are making CIA an issue, because you have a majority of Assamese feeling that the CIA, which seeks to give citizenship to people who have sought shelter in India, is something that is viewed differently in Assam. That is
Okay.
something our viewers of Rajya Sabha will understand. There, they do not want anybody in, whether it is, no matter what is the religious denomination of the person coming in, Vishal.
Okay, definitely. Sandeep Fukan is with us, Deputy Editor of The Hindu. Sandeep, welcome to Sunset Television. We're talking about the Congress's prospect in these two states first, that is West Bengal and Assam. And as Shekhar was pointing out, this is also being pointed out by the experts that if you're looking at Assam, then the very fact that Congress is trying to go ahead and have alliances with smaller regional players, sort of a bouquet of parties out there, points out a lack of confidence amongst the party there in taking on the BJP. And if you're looking at West Bengal, then looks like the Congress is contended by playing second fiddle to the left front.
Absolutely. Let's discuss state by state, Vishal. First, Assam, you're absolutely right. Fact that there was a time when Mr. Ajmal, Badruddin Ajmal, when he was starting out as a politician, and as Shekhar quite rightly pointed out, he was known as this perfume king. So when he was, starting out politics in Assam, Mr. Tarun Gogoi often when journalists asked him that what about this challenge from Ajmal, he would turn around and say, "Who is Ajmal?" So that was, in his characteristic smile, "Who's Ajmal?" So that was the kind of relationship that Mr. Gogoi had with Mr. Ajmal. But it's a clear sign that the party has really lost a lot of its strength, though I still maintain that Kerala and Assam are the two states where the Congress still has an organizational structure. If you compare it with any of the other states in North India, there is still a robust structure. But in the past 5-6 years, the slide has been rather fast, and that slide was facilitated by one of their own leaders, Mr. Himanta Biswa Sharma, who switched over to the BJP. And since then, it's not just Assam, by the way. BJP today is in power in Manipur, in Tripura, so they've sort of slipped. When it comes to Bengal, and quite clearly, as Shekharji rightly said, that in Assam, it's a sign of their weakness, and that's why they have allied with Mr. Ajmal. They also, the other calculation is that they want to basically prevent a split in the anti-BJP vote. They want a consolidation of anti-BJP vote, and that's why they have gone in for the largest kind of alliance. But I'm not sure if that is going to happen, because this election is going to be a three-cornered election. So you have the NDA, the existing alliance. You will also have the Congress Grand Alliance of 7 parties, CPI, CPM, but these are not, very powerful parties on the ground. So essentially, it will be Mr. Ajmal's party, AIUDF, and the Congress. And then the third front, as it were, are these new regional parties that has stemmed out of the movement against Citizenship Amendment Act, and these are primarily two parties, Assam Jatiya Porikhon and the Rise or Dol. These are two parties. One is led by a former student leader, much like Sonowal, Lurinjiti Gogoi, and the other one is led by Akhil Gogoi. So these are two challengers. If you come to Bengal, it's a quite different situation. Left has, really slipped up. I've covered left politics for a long time, Vishal, and you know that left actually has been a very, very, it's been a dramatic fall for the left in West Bengal. If you look at the last time figures, Congress had 44 seats, whereas left had only, 20 or 25, 26 seats. So Congress was in a better position than the left. So both the sides have gone with the same kind of seat arrangement. 92 seats out of 294, 92 will be contested by the Congress, and the remaining 202 seats will be contested by the left front, and from their own quota they have accommodated the Indian Secular Front. But clearly, as I can see it, in Bengal, it's a straight fight between the BJP and the Trinamool Congress.
Okay, Sandeep, one more point here, before we move on to the state of Kerala and Tamil Nadu. Obviously, that matters in that particular state as well. But when we're talking about Congress, this discontent amongst the senior leaders at the center, how do you think it's going to affect the poll prospects of the party in these states? Because there have been statements which have come in against the Congress's alliance with the ISF in West Bengal. None other than, senior leaders from the party, none other than Anand Sharma went ahead public on the social media platforms and pointed out that it's not in party's interest. Also, there are reports of discontent amongst some well-known leaders in the state of Assam as well.
That's right. I think this has always been a problem. I mean, look, the point is, Vishal, that when you are heading towards an election, those who get left out, those who are dropped, there is always a sense of discontentment. It's not just the Congress, by the way. Since you mentioned Assam, and I'm from that state, I follow politics of that state quite well. In fact, there are any number of discontent BJP leaders, because many of the sitting MLAs have been dropped. This is, by the way, has been a strategy of the BJP, and several sitting MLAs who are even at this point of time close to the Chief Minister, Mr. Parbananda Sonowal, they were dropped. And so there is a sense of discontentment in both camps. But the party in power, if they face that sort of discontentment, it's a little embarrassing. As far as disgruntlement or dissension or factionalism is concerned, it's rampant in Congress as well. They were a divided house. But as far as the Assam campaign is concerned, they have tried to put up a joint face. They have tried, they've tried out many innovative campaigns. But as far as I can see, that's only limited to the campaign. The divisions exist deep down. Just that for the sake of campaign, so that it doesn't look bad. They have come together. And as far as G23 leaders like Anand Sharma commenting, it makes for bad optics, all right, Vishal. I mean, certainly it's embarrassing when Mr. Anand Sharma, the deputy leader of the Congress in Rajya Sabha, he's a Congress working committee member. So if he makes a public statement questioning the alliance, it is embarrassing. But at the same time, Mr. Anand Sharma won't really have a big say on the ground. So to that extent, it will not really impact the party's poll
Okay.
preparedness on the ground.
Okay. Let's hear Shekhar also on this aspect. Shekhar, the G23 leaders not figuring in the star campaigners list as well. Does it point to that heightened tensions between this group and the Congress leadership, and it might have the impact on party's poll prospects?
Well, as Sandeep was pointing out, they may not be actual reasons for the performance on the ground. But what is very clear is, as far as G23 and the Congress establishment, I mean, which I would mean Rahul Gandhi and his team, there are irreconcilable differences. There is no way they can patch up. So, given that situation, well, it is headed towards a climax probably after these assembly elections are over. But I think in states like say Kerala, the Kerala has nothing to do with the G23 problem, but Kerala has its own, what I would say is a kind of factionalism that has been recognized as way back from 1980 onwards, because you have a Congress I and then you have a Congress A. The Congress A, as later metamorphosed into one under woman Chandy. That is, originally it was Congress under A.K. Antony. Then you had a
Okay.
Congress I, which was then led by late Karunakaran. But today, the two factions, which are why I say they have official recognition in the sense, in the matter of ticket distribution, the tickets are distributed actually between the groups, and it is left to the groups to decide who will be the candidates.
Okay.
But this time we find there is a lot of tension because woman Chandy was actually off the screen for the last 5 years, and it was Chenitala who was, representing the party and has been more vociferous and aggressive in the assembly as the leader of the opposition. But
Okay.
I think after the local government elections, where the Congress, despite doing so well in the Lok Sabha elections, had a very dismal performance in the local self-government, which gave a boost to Pinarayi Vijayan and CPM. Because suddenly, the CPM has got very serious and looks like, they're not going to lose easily. So that's the kind of situation you are seeing, where a lot of Congress leaders are coming out. You saw the PC Chacko other day, then you saw yesterday there was Vijayan Thomas coming out. These are leaders who may not make big headlines, but definitely it points to a situation where, despite Rahul Gandhi being a member of the Lok Sabha from Kerala, the Congress, which could have done much better and perhaps could have had a better striking rate, today seems to be struggling because of in-house issues. And we will know more, when finally how they select the candidate, because everything has been finalized. Would expect some details to emerge in the next 1 or 2 days.
Okay. Okay, definitely. As Shekhar has pointed out, looks like in the state of Kerala also, the Congress party, seemingly the factionalism is something which is becoming a problem for them out there. I'd like to bring you in here. In fact, we wanted to move on to Kerala immediately next, and I'd like to ask my colleagues to, play up those numbers from the state of Kerala. Now, Sandeep, if we're talking about the state of Kerala here, usually it is it's sort of a pendulum sort of a game there. UDF for 5 years, then LDF for 5 years. Now, this time around, as Shekhar was also pointing out, there's this entire issue with the Congress's, the different groups within the state Congress, and there's pulls happening from everywhere. Looks like they're on a sort of a sticky wicket. Congress-led UDF there as well in Kerala also.
Absolutely. In fact, there were some states where you could always make out that every 5 years they change the government, no matter how well they perform. But the voters always choose the rival. Rajasthan is one of them. Until recently, until J. Jayalalitha broke that trend, Tamil Nadu was one of them. And since 77, Kerala hasn't seen that change in pattern. Every 5 years, the government gets changed. But this time, it could be very different, as Shekharji very rightly pointed out. Despite doing so well in the, except one seat, they won all the Lok Sabha seats, right, from that state. And despite that, they performed quite badly in the civic polls, which were seen as an indicator of how the party is going to perform in assembly polls. That's one. Secondly, it's a massive, it is as if there are 2-3 different parties within the same party. So, for example, PC Chako is seen, was originally he was someone who was close to Sharad Pawar when Mr. Pawar used to be with the Congress. After that, he was close to the Gandhi family. Imagine a leader who's close to the Gandhis have had to quit and make a public announcement of his quitting because he felt marginalized.
Definitely.
Mr. Uman Chandi was not really in the picture for the past 5 years. He has come in. Mr.
Definitely.
Chetitala was the leader of the opposition.
That does definitely, Sandeep, you're very right. Events like these and leaders like these leaving the party does point out that there is something wrong within the organization and something wrong with the way things are moving on. We'll have to wait and watch as to what happens in Kerala. But, we're running short of time. But one quick question to Mr. Shekhar Iyer on one more state, and we are moving now to Tamil Nadu, Mr. Iyer. It has always been for almost 50 years DMK versus AIA DMK, and Congress has not been able to regain that foothold which Sandeep was referring to there in Tamil Nadu so far. This time around, as was expected, they're going along with DMK. The BJP is going along with AIA DMK. Do you believe Congress, there might be some gain in Congress's fortune by riding, a pillion on with DMK there?
No, well, Congress has always been riding on the pillion in Tamil Nadu, whether it is whether the vehicle is driven by AIDMK or DMK. But I think what has happened is this time is Congress has been losing its bargaining power in terms of number of seats it should share, which is directly proportional to the support on the ground. So something we saw, Congress DMK talks went through some excruciating moments. Congress started with a demand like saying they started with 54 because they have 9 Lok Sabha seats and 9 into 6. They said, we should start the negotiation 54, and they came down up to 41. But DMK was not willing to give even 1 seat more than 18, saying that this is your strength, and we are scared after what happened in Bihar that we give you more seats and you lose those seats to ADMK. So consequently, there were such difficult moments when TNCC chief Aragiri himself broke down among his party colleagues, saying, look how the DMK is treating us. Now, this was happening at a time when Rahul Gandhi was making forays into Tamil Nadu, having those one-to-one chats with, the discussions and meetings with college students, with the youth, when all this was going on, or was brewing some local dish. Now, when all this, I would say, imagery was being flashed, you had a situation where nothing was happening. And finally, it took both Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi to speak to Stalin and Kanimuri or whoever, and finally see that the figure moves from 18 to 25. But again, in terms of seats given, out of the 25, 5 seats have been given in such a way that they will be facing directly the BJP, including the Lok Sabha by-election from Kanyakumari. And in Coimbatore South, I think, which we all will be interested to know, it is the Makkal Needhi Mayam leader Kamala Hassan who is going to face not ADMK or DMK, he is going to face Congress and BJP.
Okay.
In Coimbatore South. So actually, at one time, Kamala Hassan was open to an idea of an alliance with Congress. In fact, he went to the extent of saying when the talks were going through painful process, that any party which denies Congress rightful place is actually the B team of the BJP. Referring to DMK.
Okay.
But then finally there was a deal. But then you can see within the Congress today, you hear Congress MPs protesting in his own area against the way the tickets have been handled, the way the bargaining has been done. Similarly, another leader is out in the public because the DMK's argument was even if you give you 25 seats, you have 25 leaders who are factioned by themselves despite the state of affairs in TNCC. So
Okay.
I think this is a state where, despite Rahul Gandhi focusing a lot on the South, I think in terms of organization, and P. Chidambaram and his son,
Definitely.
Karthi, have been virtually, hands off because they feel that, of course, Chidambaram came out with a statement saying that don't get into political adventurism by toying the idea of a third front. Meaning,
Definitely,
don't
definitely,
fall into
Mr.
the
Iyer,
trap
you're
of
right.
Kamala
There
Harris.
have been, several big faces from down south as far as Congress is concerned, and that happened not quite long ago. But now the situation doesn't seem to be so favorable for them. And as our panelists were pointing out, as far as Tamil Nadu is concerned, 25 seats Congress has got in the alliance. We'll have to wait and watch whether they make up for that, portion which has been allotted to them, or they'll drag down the entire alliance as happened in the state of Bihar as well. Thank you so much, Shekhar Iyer out there, and Sandeep Fukan as well, for sharing your insights and analysis on the prospects of the Congress party in these 4 states assembly elections. Quite a different situation for the Congress in all these states. They're fighting a different battle, not only with the other political opponents, but from within the organization as well. We'll come back again next week and we'll focus on other political parties, major players in these elections, the TMC, the DMK, the AIA-DMK, and other regional players as well. Till then, keep watching Sunset Television. Thank you.